Hello, welcome to the Superbone channel. We're interviewing top trombonists from around the world. And next up, from London, is Jeff Williams. Say hi, Jeff.
London, you say? Hello, how are you?
Jeff plays with the Mississippi Swamp Dogs here in London, and a very in-demand trombonist and a bit of a character, as you'll see. Jeff, first question for you. Favourite jazz trombonist and maybe a recording?
Okay, well, I've got two. I couldn't get it down to one. This is going to be boring because I'm sure every trombone player that you ever ask will include Frank Rosolino.
Yeah.
Because he's just an absolute jaw-dropping master.
Yep.
What I love about him, that here's a guy who's got so much technique, but the technique doesn't get in the way of his communication, doesn't get in the way of his artistry. It all adds to it. It just makes him, you know, such an amazing player. His playing's full of joy and humour and happiness, and then at the same time, it can be unbelievably sad. And of course, you know, he was obviously a bipolar nutcase, as you can see how he ended up. But yeah, I mean, he's one of the few players that has a ridiculous technique that I love listening to, because he still has that amazing emotional connection with his playing. On the other end of the scale is a trombone player who uses very little technique, but is just a beautiful, beautiful lyrical player called George Chisholm, who was a Scottish trombone player who played with Louis and played with Benny Carter and played with Fats Waller. So he goes back a long, long way. But you hear him play, and his playing is so beautifully fresh. His playing is full of humour and sadness and energy, and he's just a wonderful original player. As soon as he plays, you know exactly who it is. Same with Rosolino. As soon as they play with a note or two, you know exactly who you're listening to. And the best tracks that sum them up for me, for Frank Rosolino, it's Here's That Rainy Day from the Bobby Knight album called Cream of the Crop. And it's virtually impossible to get hold of. And then something which is a lot easier to get hold of and really worth checking out if you haven't is George Chisholm playing Stardust. An interesting thing about George Chisholm, he's like a lot of those players who played with Ellington, is that he was a crafter of solos. So he would have crafted and improvised a solo over a period of time until he adapted it and changed it till it was absolutely a work of art. And then once he got it down pat and he knew exactly how he wanted to mould and form this solo, then he kept it, which is a wonderful professional thing to do, because here's a guy who can go out, may have had a lousy row with his wife, or may have had a rotten journey on the way to the gig. He may have a stomach bug or whatever he's feeling, but he knows he's got this beautiful work of art in the bag, which he can pull out on the gig and just play. It's quite a tradition in jazz. A lot of people think every time you play, you've got to come out with something new. And it's not the case, you know, it's not the case at all. It's coming out with something that's from your personality and something that's full of emotion and full of that kind of connection that people can sort of pick up on. There's an amazing version of Roy Eldridge, the trumpet player, playing After You've Gone.
Yep.
And of course, he was the link between Louis and Dizzy. And Louis and Dizzy, like I know them, you know, talking like it's typical jazz trombonists talking about Miles and like we know these people, you know. Yeah. I mean, I did once have a P next to Dizzy Gillespie, but you know, when you have a P, it's not the easiest social situation to turn around and say hello, you know.
No, you're not going to shake his hand, are you?
Exactly, yeah, precisely. But I also had a P with McCoy Tyner.
This is not. I didn't have a question about the famous jazz people that you've had a pee with, Jeff.
I've peed with the best, you know. Anyway, where the hell was I? Yeah, so this amazing solo, and in the middle of this solo, Roy Eldridge takes this break, and the break is like a journey from Louis Armstrong to Dizzy Gillespie. It's absolutely amazing. You can hear the history of jazz trumpet in that break from the time of Louis through to Diz, and it just sums it up for me, you know.
Yeah. And there's that variety that you need as a trombonist. Obviously, you've got the Mississippi Swamp Dogs.
The way the band came about was because I was doing a lot of commercial work, a lot of corporate work, and a lot of weddings and parties and stuff. And it was all very commercial, and I was making some great money on it. And then we had a crash in 2008. And it all kind of slowly disappeared and dried up. And my playing was getting very stale. I mean, I was just sort of playing for money. I was basically a musical whore. And I wasn't really sort of making any headroad with my jazz playing at all. And after a couple of years, I realised I was getting too old, grey and fat to sort of appear at people's weddings. And I certainly didn't want to kind of play the repertoire that people who were getting married in 2010 and 2015 wanted to hear, you know.
Yeah.
So I thought, I need an age-appropriate band. I need something that's age-appropriate. And I want to be able to play a wide range of music as possible. So I set up this New Orleans band, the Swamp Dogs. And of course, if you think of the music that emanates from the Deep South,
Yes. Yeah.
it's everything. There's funk, there's blues, there's soul, there's jazz, southern rock even. So the Swamp Dogs kind of play a bit of everything. So we're able to really play everything. And the great thing about it, of course, is you're only ever one song away from something you like. So if you're not a big fan of funk, well, you might be a big fan of jazz. If you're not a fan of jazz, you might be a big fan of gospel.
Yeah.
Then New Orleans rumba. And so it goes on. So it's a chance to play a bit of everything. And the band's been great. It's been really successful. We played at Ronnie's many times. We do the Hideaway down in Streatham and the Pizza Express. And we're currently doing very, very well in my kitchen. So
they're all there in your kitchen.
No, in spirit. Yeah. They've all sat around this table. They're here in spirit, but we've not made music for quite a while.
Let's get on to your career. Obviously, a little bit of a mystery to me. Jeff isn't someone who's put a lot of stuff up on the internet about his own career, so we have to ask the man himself. Can you give us an insight into your journey through music, your first teachers, influences through the years?
I first played the trombone at school. The school had a brass band. I picked up a trombone at 12. It was a real old pea shooter, probably from the turn of the century. It was absolutely knackered, could hardly play. Typical school instrument. I took it home, and my dad sadly passed away a few years ago. He's always been a fantastic engineer. Took it apart, having never done anything like that before in his life. Took it apart and resoldered it together and took dents out of it and made it playable. And it's just a bit of tubing as far as he was concerned. And it held no mystique to him. Instinctively knew what to do with it. And although I'm self-taught, I was lucky enough at our school. There was the bass trombonist with the Halley Orchestra.
Yep.
Who's a bit of a legend. He's called Nev Roberts, who's also passed away, who actually did lessons at our school for 50 pence a lesson. 50p a lesson, can you believe it? And he was a phenomenal trombone player. He was taught by Dennis Wick down at the Guildhall. But I had 3 or 4 lessons with him just to sort of find out how to hold it and stuff. And I just played in brass bands, and then I got interested in jazz from when I was about 15. Put the telly on, and the Glenn Miller Story came on TV, and that was great. I was hooked. By the age of 15 or 16, I started going along to concerts and gigs. Coming from Manchester, we had the Free Trade Hall, which was our big venue at the time. I saw the Gil Evans Band, which was astonishing. I saw the Count Basie Band with Ella Fitzgerald and Al Gray, and that was an amazing experience. And I had some friends who were at Chisholm School of Music. We had a little kind of band that we kind of got together with a couple of them. Mike Lindup was in the band. He went on and he was Level 42's keyboard player. But I only ever played for fun. I did the odd gig in Manchester, came down to London. I was working for a living. I did a million jobs, none of which I liked or hated. And I got to about the age of 30 and I thought, God, this is, I love playing, but, I hate work. I hate working for a living. And I spoke to my wife and said, I'd really like to give up work and learn to play properly and take up playing.
Yep.
And she was amazing. She says, yeah, why not? So we kind of downsized. We had a lovely house which we sold, and we bought a tiny little place in West Norwood, which is where we live now. We had a holiday, and then when we came back, we moved in. And on a holiday, we inadvertently got pregnant. That kind of put the knockers on it for another couple of years.
Yep.
So I had to sort of get the kids had to come first. So I carried on working. And then finally, about the age of 34, 35, I was able to give up and try and play. I went to see Eric Crease, who was playing with the LSO at the time. Yep. And I went down to see him and told him my intentions. And he just told me what I was doing wrong and told me how to put it right. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But of course, that's when the hard work starts. So, and then I just sort of basically woodshedded. Out of the blue, I got a call to go and audition for a West End show. And I just met someone at a club. He recommended me for the gig, and I got the gig. And then I joined the Ray Gelato band for a year, 18 months. But I was still working on my playing. I still had loads to kind of improve on. And I was very much the weak link in that band. So after a year and a half, I was unceremoniously dumped.
The next one we've got for you, Jeff, is we'd like to find out a funny story. You've already told a few already, but funny story from maybe a gig that you did that didn't go so well.
One of the gigs I do sometimes would be a Jewish wedding band called A Taste of Honey. And we used to call it a waste of money. And this band was very, very well known on the Jewish function circuit. And it was run by a Jewish guy, a really sweet guy, and his wife played the keyboards in the band. This band used to employ great players. I mean, this was an amazingly good band of musicians, but there were no charts. And there was like one microphone in front of the horns. And Yossi from behind the kit we'd do some, I suppose you'd call it dinner music. We'd play a few songs. And then we'd do a load of Jewish tunes, none of which I knew. And I was advised before I did the gig, that whenever Yossi talks to you, just nod your head and say yes, you know. So Yossi would lean over the gig and say something in Hebrew. He says, "Oh, let's do a chala shala chala." And I'd nod my head and say yes, you know. And then we go straight into some kind of minor thrash. And kind of thing. And I thought, oh yeah, I've got it now. It's in A minor, right? Okay, yeah, right, down, and we're away, you know. And I remember Sigul one night leaning over, and she says, "Do you know?" He says, "You can get very average musicians, and if you really rehearse them well, you can make them sound really good." He said, "This is one of the few bands that you can get really good players and make them sound really bad." The dance would start, you know, and everyone would be getting up on the floor. And this was the bit that absolutely dropped my jaw. It was jaw-dropping. That he had a room full of very, very successful people, because these gigs were always at places like the Inn on the Park or the Hilton Hotel. And the band would be playing, and they used a lot of backing tracks. So you can imagine they'd have about 5 or 6 really good singers, really great session singers, people that would work with Clapton and acts that would come on, and on a Sunday night they'd come out and they'd sing the songs. They'd bring a backing track, and we'd stand in front of a microphone, most of the time miming, whilst it's all on the track behind us. So in the course of this, there'd be a nice slow song, and Yossi, the drummer whose band it was, and Iris, his wife, who played the keys, they both loved up. They adored each other to bits. It was very sweet. They'd get off their instruments and they'd go down the dance floor and dance. So there's no one on the drums, there's no one on the keys, and they're dancing away with the audience, you see. And people would come up to them and say, "Oh, Yossi, the band sounds wonderful tonight," you know. And, you know, you do an Earth, Wind and Fire number, it sounds like Earth, Wind and Fire. You know, you do a Four Tops number, it sounds like the Four Tops. You do a Justin Bieber, and it's just like Justin Bieber's in the room. Marvellous band, Yossi. And Iris, it's lovely to see you too. And, oh, thanks very much for asking us along. Hang on a second. Look, there's no musicians on stage. They're dancing with you. Can't you see what's going on? It had me in stitches. So it was always a fun night. It was always a fun night.
Sounds great.
But for all the wrong reasons.
Sounds like an absolute character. Brilliant, Jeff. Well, it's been good interviewing you so far for Superbone. We like to pump up a current project. Can you tell us a bit more about something you'd like to tell us about?
Well, we're all in limbo at the moment, aren't we? I mean, we're all very much stuck at home, and we can see it as a complete disaster, or we can see it as an opportunity. And one thing that I really, really want to do with the Swamp Dogs next is put together a gospel album. I mean, gospel's a big part of the Deep South tradition, and the band isn't just about New Orleans, it's also about the Deep South. I'm an atheist myself, but I love gospel music. And I'd like to bring an album out. We've got an album already called Songs from the Swamp, available on all good digital platforms.
In the description.
Yeah, and through my website as well, MississippiSwampDogs.com. And so, yeah, so I'm looking to put together a gospel album, and I'd really like to perform it in churches.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We will pop those links in the description for everyone who wants to find out more about the Mississippi Swamp Dogs. Hopefully we can get out of this isolation and get to a gig of yours, Jeff. But have an enjoyable swim in Hawaii or somewhere wherever you are. Keep it on. But thank you so much. We've enjoyed it.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for asking me, Mike. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm honoured to be in such esteemed company.
No worries. Thanks, Jeff. Stay tuned for more Superbone videos coming up. Thank you.